That includes Palmer, Kelly, and the city manager, Mr. Delgado, and finance director, thank you, Michael Brossart, to turn their cameras and microphones off until they are addressed to come in, and we can now start the meeting, and I'll do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good morning. This is our agenda study for our April 6th meeting. On Monday, we're meeting by Zoom, and we have Commissioner McLeod, Commissioner Walker, Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Franklin, Commissioner Roberts, and I saw Stephanie Madden, I think, also by phone.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So that's great. Thank you, Stephanie. So we can begin the meeting, and we have additional people that will be joining us today who are not part of the commission, but will be people that we invite to make some comments and certainly to audit what we're saying, so that if we need anything clarifying, it can occur, and they are on the call as well with cameras and mics muted unless needed. So as we move into the meeting today, we have a pretty simple agenda, but we are now under the Safer at Home ordinance that, or order that has been called by the governor, which went into effect last night at midnight. And if you looked out your windows, you saw a very quiet. You saw a very quiet city last night. Commissioner Reed, I think your mic's not muted at the present time. And so then, it reminds us that we are doing the thing that we can plateau the curve on the best, which is social isolation. The fact we have Zoom and GoToMeeting doesn't make it completely social isolation as we think of FaceTime and things like that. So maybe it's more physical isolation technically, and I think there's some good reasons for us to try and integrate socially as we can, and get much better at our ability to use some of our electronic devices. That being said, we'll take a look at the meeting, which starts Monday at 3 o'clock. We will have an update from local health officials on COVID-19. Michael Spake will be making that presentation on Monday, and I see City Manager Delgado has an input.
Yes, both Michael Spake and Dr. Ashinger will be in attendance virtually to go ahead and give updates from their perspective, sir.
Very good. And they have asked, and Michael specifically, if you have any specific questions you would like to have them address at that meeting, to be able to send them to Kevin. Are you wanting to field those questions? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to let you know, I've been in contact with Dr. Akinger, and he has rounds that morning. So that afternoon. So he has asked if he could go on right at 3 o'clock. I shared that with City Manager Delgado. And if we could do that, he'll come in between his rounds, but he's going to have to drop as soon as he's done.
Okay. So we won't have any Q&A for him, but anything you have, we will attempt to have Michael answer. And then anything you could think of in advance that you might be doing, they'd appreciate just getting it in advance to them. And I think most of you have Michael's email address, and that would be probably the most efficient means to do that. And so that's a request. Then we will have no proclamations, obviously, and our Finance Committee report will be made. We'll have the consent agenda. Let's take a look at that. There's only one, there's the minutes on it, and then we go down to 4C5. Would you like to cover that, City Attorney?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's the Sixth Amendment to the purchase agreement we have with Lakewire Development Company to sell to them a 2.3 acre piece of property that's located just south of the intersection of Kathleen Road and George Jenkins Boulevard. Lakewire Development Company is owned by David Bunch and Bill Tinsley, who are developing Bonnet Springs Park. They've purchased the old Fort Natal site to the south of this property that's under contract. Between the city's parcel and the old Fort Natal property is the old right-of-way for Old Kathleen Road. That is intended to be part of the sale from the city to Lakewire Development Company. We are still trying to get final approval from the Florida Department of Transportation on that. They've conceptually approved it. They're just trying to get final approval on some of the documents necessary to make this happen. There's a $25,000 deposit that goes hard once this initial inspection period expires. And So Lakewire Development is just asking that this be extended a little bit longer until July 15th in order for this transaction of Old Kathleen Road between the Department of Transportation and the city to occur.
Questions from commissioners? Is it all right to leave that one on the consent agenda? If so, just raise your hand. That's just to give them some time to be able to work on something we already have approved. We'll go forward. Commissioner Franklin, are you in on that one? Okay, good. All right, so we'll leave that one on. Finance Director, if we could take a look at A and B. Mr. Brossart. I can't hear you, sir.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning. The first request is from Lakeland Electric. There are two pieces to it. The first, there were some unexpected costs associated with relocating the Calpine generator to a different location on our property from originally planned. The costs associated with mitigating those wetlands total about $1.5 million. So we're requesting those monies be transferred from Lakeland Electric's capital expansion fund. The second piece is an additional $1.4 million to finish the Bridgewater substation. We had hoped that $3.7 million originally budgeted would be enough to cover it, but it looks like it's about a $5.1 million project by the time it's done. Together, those the two appropriations total $2.9 million, both being requested to be transferred from the capital expansion fund of Lakeland Electric.
Any questions on that? We were apprised of that originally when they were working on the units, knowing that the budget was probably going to require some modifications based on the location and movement. Is it all right to leave that one on the agenda? Just signify your right hand if you're, or some hand if you're in. Okay, we will. And then Bridgewater, sir.
Actually, it'll be the next one to CRA. We've got part of the requirement for the Summit office building and garage coming into downtown was a contribution of $1 million towards infrastructure improvements in and around the facility. The plan all along was $500,000 of that was going to be provided by the downtown CRA. The remainder is budgeted between water, wastewater, and electric funds. So we're requesting this $500,000 be transferred from the unappropriated surplus of downtown CRA towards this contribution.
And any discussion on this? Is that fine to leave on the consent agenda as well? Just signify by raising your hand, if so. All right, we will. Okay, thank you. Takes me back, if I can get back. There we go. All right, different tools. I apologize that we're using now. And by the way, we want to make sure for our city clerk, Miss Kelly Cruz, that we make clear who is approving any item and as the first making the motion and who is seconding the motion. Since we are doing that virtually when we make some of these changes, if that happens during the course of this meeting, just you might even say, Scott Franklin, I make the motion, you know, and your name when you're seconding. That would help her. And I'll also try and make sure we send that to you. Okay. Then the next items that are on the or for Ramona on the utility on the consent agenda, C1 and 2. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. The first item is an agreement with Circuit Breaker Sales, Inc. This is, Lakeland Electric is in need of overhauling some of its breakers for Unit 3, and this is due to the time in service. They have been in service for 27 years since the plant was built, and they really should be serviced every 10 years. So in order to maintain reliability, the purchasing department issued an invitation to bid pursuant to staff's request. We had a number of responses. Of the two contractors you'll see in the chart below that provided lower pricing, one wasn't capable of doing the entire scope of work, and the other one didn't meet the city's required specifications. So the agreement is proposed to be awarded to Circuit Breaker Sales for a total amount of $84,150. Those services include the disassembly, cleaning, inspection, and standard part replacement if that's necessary. They will perform these services in their own shop, and then they'll be delivered back to Lakeland Electric. These anticipated services are to occur during the spring outage, and again, the total cost is $84,150, and that is included in Lakeland Electric's FY20 budget.
Any questions on that? Is that fine to leave on the consent agenda? If so, raise your hand. I think everyone is in on that one as well. Although I have lost, no, is Commissioner Reed? Yes, I'm sorry. My screen's good. I see him there. All right. Then you have one more, correct?
Yes, sir. The second item on the consent agenda here for utility is agreement with GSC Enterprises doing business as Fidelity Express. Fidelity has had a contractual relationship with the city since 2003. They provide retail payment processing services that enable Lakeland Electric customers to pay their utility bills, excuse me, to pay their utility bills at verified locations throughout the city. And also that this is one of a number of vendors that Lakeland Electric uses for these types of services. The term of the agreement is a 1-year term with 3 additional 1-year options of renewals. There's no cost to the city for these services. However, there is a transaction fee for customers at a rate of $1.50 per transaction. That's a convenience fee that's charged.
And optional for the customer if they don't want to pay
Correct.
that way.
There's no obligation to use it. It's just a convenience for the customers.
Any questions on this? Is that all right to leave on the consent agenda? If so, raise your hand, please. All right, so we'll leave that on. All right, thank you very much. So then let's go back to the top of the agenda, past the consent items, which included the minutes and the things we just went through. There are no requests to appear from the general public. We have an equalization hearing. So when we go to our equalization board, we have this list that is in front of us now. Any questions on the equalization items and any comments by City Attorney Davis?
Nothing unusual here. A lot of familiar names and properties on here, but nothing unusual.
Unfortunately true. Any questions by commissioners? Okay, we'll go beyond that and leaving the equalization part of our board and back to the agenda. Public hearings, ordinances, none, and resolutions, we have one.
Yes, this is a required public hearing in order to qualify for state CHIP funds. We have to adopt a 3-year local housing assistance plan. So that's what this resolution does. I see Annie Gibson coming into the meeting, and she can add anything in addition to that.
Annie, this is what we typically do every 3 years, correct?
Yes, sir. This is Annie Gibson, Housing Program Supervisor. This is our 3-year plan for our SHIP funds. So it's an anticipation of course, the money that was allocated this year. In the document itself are listed strategies that the city plans to use for the next 3 years. Also in the plan is a goals chart. And if you look at those goals charts with numbers, we have to use so much money for home ownership, so much money for construction, and so forth and so on. So all those numbers, Florida Housing Finance Corporation has done us a really nice time spreadsheet to show the expenditures that we can't go over and that we can go over.
Is this as comprehensive as they have done in the past ever?
This is a new thing for us, and it's very helpful to the staff because we don't have to estimate or determine what's over the home ownership portion of the construction part. Is all outlined for us.
Excellent. Any questions from commissioners on this? Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Gibson, do you know, because now the situation of course, we're facing with the COVID-19, and we're hearing some talk possibly that, because the governor has not signed the budget yet, would there be any challenge with the funding that we're shown here that we may get some modification, or are we aware of anything at this point?
Well, we're not aware of the current budget or the $1 million that city was allocated, but of course that was 2 weeks ago when all of this was not happening. So personally, I do anticipate that amount would be reduced. What they did do for us though, if you have unencumbered funds, SHIP funds from prior years, they have given us the go ahead to allocate those funds for the recent health crises. So for instance, in all of our LHAPs or documents, we have a disaster strategy. So what they're recommending for us is that we use our unencumbered funds for this particular event. In particular, they're looking at rental assistance and foreclosure prevention.
Excellent. Any other questions? Commissioner McLeod? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I was just wondering if there were any significant changes in this from what we've done or seen in years past.
No, sir. These are all the strategies that we have done in the prior years. You can add and subtract as you see fit for your municipality. It just takes an amendment done.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much, Annie. Appreciate it, and appreciate the great work you do in making sure those funds are utilized properly.
Thank you.
That brings us to, there are no community redevelopment agency reports. However, the annual report was released last week, which I'm sure you have had a chance to see, from Elise Drumgo, and it is wonderfully done. And if you haven't had a chance to review it, it is available online, and you should take a look. Okay, City Manager Delgado, bring us up to speed on your 4 points, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have 4 items under the city manager's portion for Monday, and your opining and hopefully ratification. The first is a recommendation from the airport for a lease agreement with, or a new lease agreement with with NOAA. We're in the process of finalizing that new lease agreement with NOAA. The lease proposed is seeking to add additional space to accommodate NOAA's expansion, which includes the ability to add 50 to 75 additional staff members, as well as 2 aircraft. Accordingly, the proposed lease agreement seeks to consolidate NOAA's need for this additional space and new investment with the current lease that we have. The lease is for a term of 20 years, with 15 years being firm. That will commence upon substantial completion of the expansion project at the time of certification of occupancy being issued. The date for the completion of the expansion project is February 1st, 2021. The current lease agreement with NOAA will continue to be in effect until that expanded space is ready. The remaining unamortized tenant improvements from the existing agreement, estimated at $1.6 million, will be added to the new lease agreement and amortized over that 15-year firm period. The usable space covered in the new agreement is for 156,043 square feet. The rentable space is 176,418 square feet, thus increasing the rentable footprint once it's completed by 69,554 feet. Funding for these improvements, the airport is already established through the issuance of that line of credit that you approved in November of 2019. While the building shell and tenant improvement costs will be funded by the airport, these improvement costs will be amortized and repaid to the airport as the additional rent over the fixed term of the 15 years at a rate of 2.25%. NOAA will be responsible for all operating costs, which includes utilities and janitorial costs, established at $298,146 per year, which are also subject to increases every 5 years based upon the 5-year CPI changes or actual operating costs for those preceding 5 years, whichever is greater. Thus, we're recommending that we move and have the commission approve this new lease agreement that we will move on immediately. Gene Conrad is on, so in case there's any questions regarding this lease agreement and how we came about it, Gene can answer some of those.
Are there any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Reed.
Thank you, Gene. When this advertised, when the lease is expired, will it virtually be paid for then?
It will all be paid for. It's paid for through the first 15 years of the firm term of the lease. So it is all covered.
Including interest.
Okay.
That's correct.
So $12 million enhancement to the airport, and you own it when you're done. Well, you own it all the while, but it's paid for in 15 years is how I should have said that. Any other questions? All right. I don't see any problems with that one. Next, sir.
Mr. Mayor, the second item is a construction manager at risk contract with Register Construction for the same project we just talked about. Based upon the new lease with NOAA, we will be an expansion into their new space on the Airside Center. We need to move forward with our next phase of construction. The overall project cost will be approximately $12.3 million, including design, construction costs, with NOAA being responsible for $7.8 million of those tenant improvements, while the airport will be responsible for $4.5 million for the shell and infrastructure improvements. We selected an architectural and engineering firm that was approved by the city back in October of 2019, that being the Lunds Group. They, along with the airport, put out RFPs. Ultimately, Register Construction Engineering was ranked as the most qualified for the project. We proceeded to negotiate with them and received approvals from the commission to enter into a contract with them pre-construction for the project back in December. The airport has received formal lease comments from NOAA, as you've heard, and is ready to enter into the contracts for construction services for both the shell and infrastructure components and the tenant improvement components with Register. The guaranteed maximum price have been qualified by for the tenant improvements in the amount of $7,076,952, and the GMP for the shell improvements is $4,138,035, and all this has been approved by NOAA, the design criteria. This contract specifies that the construction manager at risk is compensated for their actual labor costs expended on the construction. Functions performed include administration and oversight of the project. The overhead and profit for the construction manager at risk are expressed as a percentage of the actual construction costs that are incurred, and that percentage used was 6%. Accordingly, it's going to be recommended to the commission that we enter into this contract with Register Construction based on those architectural and engineering plans in an amount not to exceed $11,310,307. Commission had already previously approved the funding for this project back in November of 2019.
Any questions on that item? Your third item, sir.
Third item is a construction engineering inspection services for the North Wabash Avenue Extension project. The purchasing division began advertising an RFQ for these services. The selection committee, made up of staff from Public Works, met in February and ranked 5 firms. The top firm being Rommel, Klemper, and Call, I believe, LLP, or I'll just say RK&K. They're out of Lakeland, Florida. This construction engineering inspection services are required for the construction phase of the North Wabash Avenue extension. City staff has negotiated a not to exceed fee of $549,153 with RK&K for this work. The estimated construction duration is 365 days. We anticipate advertising for construction bids in May of 2020. And the item will be funded through our transportation impact fee revenue. So we'll be asking Monday to move forward with this agreement.
Questions on this item? Commissioner Walker.
Mr. Mayor, I also got to I want to ask Gene Conrad a question too. I had my hand up. You probably did not see it.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you up earlier. No, sir.
That's okay.
Let's go back. So this relates to the earlier item.
Yeah, let's deal with this one here for Mr. James. I know we've had this particular situation as far as getting that particular part of our city, and the road construction and road diet, pretty much for what we call the north-south Wabash route. But I thought, Mr. James, that we would, and I guess it's maybe falling behind the time schedule in some regards because of having to purchase the different properties in that area there, north of 10th Street. But my question is, am I hearing correct by Mr. Delgado? It's going to be another year for construction to be completed. If I hear that correct, is that right?
No, well, what he stated was that May of 2020, so next month we'll go out for construction bids, and then it'll take about a year to complete construction.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So in other words, the road diet between about Fairbanks up to Crutchfield Road, we won't see it complete probably until next year this time.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Franklin.
I have
just a quick question on the. Normally, we see the results of the bids from the other firms. Just curious as to how close these were, and it was encouraging to see that we had 3 of the 5 from here in Lakeland. But how tight were those bids?
Well, actually, what we received was qualifications, and we ranked them based on their qualifications. And so the scores were high. We didn't see any bid numbers because we're not allowed to because of CCNA. But we can provide you a summary of the score sheet if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, I missed that on the qualifications. I just read the not to exceed fee. But so we established that not to exceed fee, and the others agreed to meet that, and we just picked who was most qualified to do it at that number?
Well, no, the way it works is we rank the firms based on their qualifications, and then we negotiate with the number 1 ranked firm. And rule of thumb for CEI services is typically somewhere between 10 to 12% of construction estimates. And so we kind of had an idea of where that number would be, and then we just negotiated with that number 1 ranked firm man hours and dollars.
Okay. Yeah, I guess was still a little fuzzy on which types of projects we do. We get firm bids, seal bids from, and which are based on qualifications. But all right, I can learn about that another time, I guess.
Unless you can answer it quickly, because I think it would benefit us all, Greg.
Well, basically, anytime we're seeking professional services, like the services of an architect or an engineer, we're required by Florida statute to select them based on qualifications. Surveyors are in that same category as well. But then for construction, we select based on a bid number that's submitted by the firms.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Greg.
So professional services versus construction.
That's correct.
Okay. Commissioner Walker.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I had a question for Gene Conrad, if I could.
You don't mind retracting. I'm sure none of us do. Go ahead and ask it, Mr. Conrad.
Mr. Conrad, it's not directly related to NOAA with Roman numeral 5 A and B, but my question is, as a result of the Southern Fund cancellation, what challenges do you see us being faced with, maybe at the airport, with any kind of situations financially, if there may be or not be, there may not be any at all, of course, with the support from them and of course, the relationship we have with them and the airport itself?
Well, I mean, first of all, that's a great question. We've been talking about it internally, and we've talked about it with Southern Fund as well. They're substantially, I don't know if there's a better word, damaged financially from not being able to hold the event. So there's some things we have talked about internally here that we could possibly do for them. This is something I got to talk with, obviously, Sean and Tony, and we got to vet through it and think about it and maybe potentially have something in our budget for next year, some type of rent relief specifically for them, because they're a 501c3. Obviously, they're very important to what we do here at the airport and also to the city and the economic impact that the event brings. So there's things that we're exploring to help them get through this time and get into next year and hopefully have a great event in 2021.
Okay, so if I hear you correct, then you're working through those particular situations or concerns, and then of course we'll be notified once you meet with Mr. Delgado and Mr. Rouse and bring back to us, I guess, whatever recommendations there would be as a result of the actual cancellation.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And also, as we're working on our budget for next year, obviously with the uncertainty that exists today, obviously we're a giant landlord and we have a lot of tenants out here. So we're also taking into account into our budget to make sure we're not going to over exaggerate any of our revenues. But fortunately, to be perfectly honest with you, with the NOAA deal and with Amazon starting, we're in a pretty good spot, even if we take a significant hit, because we have, again, a great tenant in NOAA. The federal government, this lease is significant, obviously, that you all have seen. And then again, with Amazon starting in June, and then we'll have a full impact of them operating next year. So we'll be able to take some hits, fortunately, because of these two additional tenants and what we're doing for NOAA. So,
thank you, sir.
Great question, Commissioner Walker, and appreciate that response, Mr. Conrad. One of the things, obviously, and I know you will do this anyway, but one of the things we want to be most oriented toward is deferments of rents as opposed to elimination of them as we can go along. Sun and Fun would be a clear exception to that, I would think, because of the nature. Sun and Fun uses their proceeds primarily for education, and that whole loss in and of itself is going to be very significant just to the school, to ASAP.
Sure. And that's a great point. And the FAA has just put out guidance earlier this week, reference, specifically for airports doing deferrals. If we're going to do that, we can't just waive those rents. They can be deferred, but then we would have to charge interest as well. But again, like you just mentioned, Sun and Fun is just a unique thing. It's a 501c3, it's a not-for-profit. So we can handle them a little bit differently than we would for the commercial or for-profit businesses here on the airport.
Great. And while we have you, and we're a little on a sidetrack anyway, and obviously with the commercial air service and Valair and our moving forward, we are stymied at the current unknowns of when restorations take place and airlines' interests get back up to speed. But a lot of citizens have asked, does that put us so that we're not going to pursue that anymore? And my response has consistently been, oh no, that stays on our front burner. Any comment with how it might impact timing?
Well, it's going to impact timing significantly. As you all know, all the airlines are parking airplanes all over the country and putting them down on airports. So it'll be some time before they get back into the swing of things and get back to what they were doing, obviously, just a couple of weeks ago. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a silver lining in there. There wouldn't necessarily be an opportunity, instead of maybe adding 14 to 15 flights back into Tampa and Orlando, maybe they give us a shot. Because we do have the revenue guarantee, and because of the uncertainty, having that revenue guarantee may help us a little bit. But again, it's hard to say at this point, but we'll see what happens and keep the pedal to the metal.
Great. Thank you, sir. Any other questions from commissioners? All right, Mr. Delgado, your next item.
The last item is a recommendation for some mid-year table of organization modifications and appropriations. Obviously, with the extent of the COVID-19 challenge, there were other mid-year requests that we have eliminated at this point. You probably have seen in an email that I sent citywide to department heads, we're implementing a hiring freeze as of today. Only essential mission critical positions that are currently unfilled will be taken a look at. These positions, though, were kind of in the hopper, and we wanted to move forward with them. We do this usually every fiscal year during mid-year. The process is a formal request from each of the departments, must include sufficient justification based upon business needs, and obviously reviewed by a number of our fiscal and HR and management departments. There are 3 requests that have made the cut. That first one being an addition of 1 college resource officer, which is a cost-neutral request. You might have been aware, based upon previous conversations, that Florida Southern College has requested another police officer assigned to the school and has offered to cover 100% of those costs. The appropriation and increase estimate for those revenues would be $85,161 into the police department budget, which will cover the cost of the position for the remainder of and I'm sorry, it says fiscal year 18. It should say fiscal year 20, along with the purchase of a new vehicle. So that is covered. It's a cost neutral, and Florida Southern is handling that one. The next one is the fire department, an overhire of one firefighter position, obviously a mission critical position. The change is based on a vacancy that will occur just after the orientation process on April 15th. We will not be having that orientation, but we will still be flipping over those recruits. That is also a cost neutral hire. And then finally, the water utilities, we're adding one operational support tech 2 for the wetlands, of payroll impact of $53,534. This addition is required to help maintain the existing, the additional 16 miles of 7 wetlands trails, the park features, and the buildings that are currently underway to be reopened. This appropriation increase estimate revenues are in our water utility fund and under the wetlands division. So we already have those funds, and this will be recommended to you on Monday.
Any questions on that from any of the commissioners? Commissioner McCarley, do you have a question? No, okay. You might want to take a comment, City Manager Delgado, to talk about are your thoughts with respect to strategic planning and budgeting, just as we look forward to the cycle and the year that's in front of us. I think it would be good to maybe set an early tone from our earlier discussions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. Obviously, the COVID-19 challenge has significantly impacted revenues to the city, everywhere from our revenues at the RP Funding Center to obviously Cleveland Heights Golf Course, which is now closed down until the end of the executive order at least. Additional rentals on many of our properties, whether they be Lake Mirror or Peggy Brown, but we're also going to see impacts related to the gas tax and some of the other revenues that come from outside of the city, either from federal or state funding. So that will require us to make some modifications. We will continue to, we will still have our strategic planning process. Obviously, that will be for years 2, 3, 4, 5, and beyond. Because of the current executive order, are hoping to have it in May. We've moved it from April to May, and so that's really for long range visioning. Our budget process, however, will probably be modified. It'll be more of a true sit down with the commissioners to try to emphasize tightening our belt as we look into fiscal year 2011, unless something changes drastically here very shortly. We're seeing the markets impacted. Obviously, that impacts contribution rates to pension funds and a number of those things. We're seeing what's happening to the businesses within our community, and obviously property valuations might take some impacts as we move forward. So the budgeting process really might change a bit. Probably more of workshops associated with staff and the commission, just to take a look at how going into fiscal year 2011 we can tighten our belt, try to maintain some of the good projects that we have moving forward, but really looking at where we are from a revenue and expense standpoint at that time, so that we can maintain the community services that we currently do.
Any comments from commissioners on that? I think it's a good expectation for us to think through, and so appreciate that as we orient our thinking towards that time. And let's say we got to May and we were still under a safer at home order as a city. Do you think doing the budget meeting by electronically is still possible to maintain the schedule?
You mean the strategic planning meeting? Obviously, hopefully we'll become pros at doing this over the next month, and it might give us an opportunity to do that. But, you know, when you do strategic planning, it's always good to have people in a room and really get an opportunity to interface. And I know, talking with our facilitator, Dr. Collins, he likes the same, and that's why we moved it to May. However, we might be pros at this by then. It might avail us the opportunity to do it virtually. I hope
my recommendation would be that I'd rather not delay it beyond that. If we have to do it virtually, I think we'll get better at this as we go on. Commissioner McCarley.
I'm sorry. I think I don't want to make either, and I'm glad the mayor brought this up to talk about the process, because I don't want to get behind. I don't think any of us want to get behind, and especially with the new things going on in our world, we want to stay ahead of the curve with tightening our belts and seeing how this is going to reflect in 2021. I think if there are 7 of us and we determine, the specific people that have to rotate in and out of the room, and maybe even have Kelly Skype in to take the minutes, if we're spread out at RP funding, we could potentially still do that if the limit's still 10 at that point. Because I think we can we could be in a big circle and be up on top of each other and just have staff rotate in and out, so we never break that shift of 10 people or more.
We could even have staff come in on the screen,
right?
So we could do some combination where we're present with the facilitator, Dr. Collins, but we have the individuals come in that we need to talk to from the screen. Yes, City Manager Delgado.
Yeah, that's one of the things we've taken a look at, how to best facilitate it in a very large room and try to figure out what staff members need to be there. Obviously, there's got to be public likes to see these type of things, and so we're going to have to figure out a way to make sure that the public can at least view it either on LGTV. Normally, you don't take questions from the public or comments from the public, so we might be able to facilitate that in that manner. So yes, we're trying to look at a number of ways to make this work so that we don't slow down the process. And obviously, we're making some changes. This is we've made changes to how we're going to do this, so there'll probably be less staff involvement and more discussion from City Commission.
Good, which I think we'll all like. That's okay with us. All right. Thank you very much for that. That takes us to our City Attorney, Mr. Davis. Take the ordinance, first reading.
Okay, thank you. One ordinance for first reading. It's a zoning ordinance relating to a memory and assisted living facility on Lakeland Hills Boulevard, just south of Tigertown. They are seeking to expand the number of beds in their existing building from 85 to 95 beds, so only a 10 bed increase. So they are planning to stay within their existing footprint. But to do that, they have to change their zoning from Office 1 to Commercial to C1. So that is what this request is. There will also be a parking lease agreement with the city that goes along with this for second reading, because they are going to need a few more parking spaces to make this happen. I know Teresa is on the call, I believe. I'm not sure if she has any screens that she can show. I'm not sure if we're there yet, but.
All right. I see Commissioner question from Commissioner Walker, and then Teresa, you could add in anything after that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is probably for Ms. Teresa. In relationship to the new affordable housing project that should be landing, if I'm thinking correctly, right near where this particular facility is, do you see any challenge with that particular construction of that facility? And I guess how many of the units are supposed to be there? Because all this tie in right there, abutting one another. You see any challenge with that at all as we move forward to maybe in the second reading of this, approving this particular operation having some expansion?
If I understand correctly, Commissioner, you're asking about the Bella Vista Affordable Housing Project?
That's correct.
Okay. There shouldn't be any conflicts in terms of parking challenges because these two properties are significantly set apart from each other. This facility, Grand Villa, is pretty much landlocked, so they don't have any room for building expansion, which is why they're looking to just expand beds within their current facility. And that's why they need the parking to accommodate that expansion.
Okay, so again, the new affordable housing project that's coming out of the ground, hopefully here soon, abutting, not so much abutting, but very close to it, would not present any challenges for what they're looking to do. And for the affordable housing construction need to be done, right? No problem.
There's not any problem. And I'm attempting here to share my screen so that I can show you an aerial of the property. And I don't know if Kevin has control over that.
Yes, Teresa, could you first turn on your camera? And it looks as if it's off, and then we'll shift it over to you.
All right. I'm showing my camera is on.
It isn't.
We see nothing but
there might be something in front of it. There you go.
There you go.
That is much
slider on top.
And it's good to see you.
All right. Let's see here. Yeah, my screen button is still.
You're the presenter now. You have control.
Okay.
There you go. We see it.
You
Okay,
see it?
that's very helpful. Yes.
Great. So the parking that's being contemplated to support the expansion is immediately to the east of the buildings. So within the paved area of the Tigertown parking, and they would have to provide a sidewalk back to that parking. And the parking on Tigertown would be primarily for staff members, so not for visitors of the facility.
They'd come in from the back.
Yeah, they come from the back. Yeah.
If you use your arrow, which we can see, show again where the parking is going to be.
The parking is going to be over, let's see if I can get this off.
We can see your arrow. It works. Right.
Over in here.
Yes, right there. That's what we thought. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And Bella Vista is way over down here and to the right.
As we pointed out, the parking lease agreement will allow them to use some spaces in that parking lot, but it also specifies that for a certain number of hours before and after and during spring training games that they obviously will have to relinquish that for use in conjunction with spring training.
Got it.
But you'll see that at the next meeting.
Commissioner Reed.
What do we charge for parking on an agreement, something like that, Palmer?
I believe it's $10 a month per space.
Okay.
Is that in this?
That is not as part of the zoning application. It'll be part of the lease agreement that you'll see next time for second reading.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Madden, you have any questions? Since I can't see your hand.
No, I'm good.
Okay, good. Just double checking. All right, that's our end of our, thank you very much, Teresa. Good to see you. Glad to see you're staying safe.
You as well.
Thank you. That takes us to your resolution, sir.
Okay, the first resolution just is associated with the loss cleaning and clearing and the equalization hearing earlier in the agenda. The second resolution is to formally request from the FDOT that they donate a parcel at the southeast corner of Sloan Avenue and George Jenkins Boulevard to the city for the city's use. It would in particular serve as part of a pedestrian connection to the Bonnet Springs Park from the south side of the park. The DOT approached the city saying that they had this surplus property and asked if we wanted it, and we determined that we could definitely use it as part of that connection to Bonnet Springs Park. So this just simply requests that there would be no money paid to the DOT for this.
Questions by Commissioner Reed.
Palmer, can you show us a map of that?
I cannot. I don't think I have that loaded up. It's
oh, you just haven't been to that go-to-meeting training class.
Where George Jenkins Boulevard stops going, it travels south, and then it starts going due west. That's where the Sloan Avenue is, right when it starts going due west. That's where this parcel is.
Will that parcel be on my normal sheet if I go back and look for it on that?
Yes, it's part of the agenda item.
Okay, I can go back and look at it a little bit.
The last page of the agenda item shows a map of Bonnet Springs Park, and then there's a red area just north of George Jenkins Boulevard, and that's where that parcel is that's being donated.
You can actually look at that, Commissioner Reed, right now if you want to open it up as you would normally. But it's a triangular piece. All right, any other questions? All right, next, sir.
All right, that's it for resolutions under miscellaneous. The first item is an agreement with In Situ Form Technologies. They are going to provide the lining of our sewer pipes, which significantly adds to the life of pipes, of our sewer pipes, up to 50 years, in fact. This is a piggyback agreement with in a contract they have with Daytona Beach. We're estimating that's going to cost, that the city outlay for this will be $688,000. That's just an estimate. They provided a price sheet to the city for different services, and we're going to use them as needed. But it's anticipated that it'll be $688,000 over the next year. I think Bill Anderson is on the meeting if you have further technical questions.
Okay, question from Commissioner McLeod? Or is that a pin rest?
It was both. It started as a pin rest and turned into a question. I was just curious, I guess for Palmer, to talk about piggyback agreements a little bit and how that comes about and why the city of Daytona Beach, and just if you could give some insights there.
Okay, well, with the piggyback process, if another jurisdiction has competitively bid out a project and the terms and conditions are substantially similar to what we're looking for, we can save the time of bidding it out ourselves and simply piggyback on that contract. I don't know if Bill Anderson can pipe in on why they wanted to do it on this particular project, but it definitely expedites things.
The pipe in was very cute. Go ahead.
This is Bill. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. We can, Bill.
Yeah, Bill Anderson, Director of Water Utilities. Not too many utilities around the state. I mean, some do use this type of technology, but when we do look to go out to bid for these things, the first thing we do is look around the state for other utilities that we can piggyback off of. As Palmer said, this was one that was recently done and available. So again, the time and cost savings versus bidding it out ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's helpful.
And you start by knowing that those values are competitively appropriate, correct? Bill?
We do, yes, absolutely, absolutely. We have a pretty good idea, and if you look throughout the bid package, there are many different size pipes and thicknesses of the material that goes into that. So we have a really good idea of what our needs are, and that's what we will go out and look for as well.
Great. Any other questions? And all of us who have watched the the new piping being laid on English Oaks for the English Oaks project appreciate why this particular repair program is of great value.
It is. It's actually a really cool process to see. And as it says in the memo, we avoid digging up a road or sidewalk or anything like that to replace a pipe. We just can line it from one manhole to another and avoid that inconvenience.
And do you use a camera to go through it that shows that the seal's tight?
We do. We use a pre and post inspection camera, and that is part of this contract. And so we can see the condition of the pipe before and after that lining process.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments? Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Anderson, and for the great work you all do.
Mayor?
Commissioner Madden, I'm sorry. Yes.
Sorry, it's hard for me to raise my hand on the phone.
Yes.
I did want to ask Bill Anderson, with stories like coming out of like Fort Lauderdale with regard to sewage spills, it would be great for you at our upcoming retreat to be able to talk about maybe like an audit of our pipes, what the age is on the various pipes, how many have maybe had this type of rehabilitation, which ones are kind of in line to get this type of rehabilitation. You may have presented this in the past to us, but now, when I hear things and even have questions from constituents with regard to the health and security of our sewer pipes, it would just be really good to kind of have a refresher on where we are with all of our pipes and where they are with their life cycle.
Absolutely, Commissioner. We certainly can provide that. Over the past several years, we've done what's called an asset management plan for those sewer pipes, and it is literally tens of thousands of lines of Excel data showing the condition of those line segments and pipes and what condition they're in, expected life expectancy of those pipes. So we can certainly provide that information.
That would be great. Even if you had some graphs with like percentages of pipes at this, from 0 to 10 years and percentage of pipes from this to this. And, it would just be really helpful for us to see that.
Yes, ma'am.
The roads.
Thank you.
On the road side, we grade the roads as we go along. Does that come across? Do you kind of do that similarly for some of those sections?
For the slip lining or replacement of the pipe?
For sewage lines that are in questionable, I think what Commissioner Madden is saying is what does that look like, and where are the Fs, if you will, that need the next round of attention? How do you identify that?
Those are identified through, all the data we have collected over the years on the pipe when it was installed, for example. And as you, I think, know, we have some infrastructure that is over 100 years old, especially in the downtown area, as you've seen over the past year or so. Those are the things that we've identified that are in need of replacement. We have a regular ongoing inspection program internally, and that's how we identify maybe some of these areas that are in need, and that's how we go through and prioritize those areas.
Thank you very much, sir, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, sir.
All right, number 4.
All right, the next 2 items relate to the water utility as well. The next item is a task authorization with Chastine Skillman in the amount of $157,000 for them to continue their study of dissolved solids in our wastewater effluent. We have to keep those under control under certain limits in order to meet DEP regulations, as well as to provide the level of water quality necessary. We send our wastewater effluent in part to Lakeland Electric for some of their cooling processes, as well as to the TECO power plant to our south. And we're required to deliver a certain quality of wastewater effluent to them. So this is studying the conductivity studies the dissolved solids in our effluent. And so this is just a further part of that process. And once again, Bill Anderson can chime in on the technical aspect of this.
By the way, and you might chime in, Bill, on what you do to reduce the density of that. Is it diluted? And if you are high, how do you make it not as high?
So, interestingly enough, as Palmer said, this is a very basically we started this back in 2018, and when we started going through this process, we identified some gaps in the data. The flows that go coming into our wastewater plants and going through various reuse, whether that's McIntosh or other industries, and then ultimately going down to the wetland and discharging to Alafaya River or to TECO, there really is basically our current treatment processes do not treat for conductivity. And as Palmer said, this is a regulated parameter at our discharge point. And really over the past 20 years, we've seen a steady increase in those levels. And that's what we're trying to identify is where are those increases coming from? Can we perhaps, instead of treating the entire train, ultimately, can we perhaps target a certain portion of it? Or are there things we can do internally to perhaps manage those flows or those conductivity levels? Over the past 20 years, we have been able to manage that effectively. Yet with the increasing, those options are becoming more and more limited. And so that's what this study will help us do. To answer your question, Mayor, we have a saying, the only solution is dilution to pollution. And really the only dilution we get is from rainfall, and conversely, lack of rainfall increases those conductivity levels.
I'll bet. Any questions from commissioners? All right, let's look at the next item while you're on, sir.
All right, the next item is a cost of services study with Raftellus Financial Consultants. The water utility is an enterprise fund and that is designed to be self-sufficient. And so they have to periodically update their revenue sufficiency analysis to make sure the rates and the impact fees are sufficient to properly fund their operation. So that's what this is doing, is taking a look at rates and impact fees through the September 30th of 2025, actually. Their services are in the amount of $75,000.
Questions? Anything you want to add, Mr. Anderson?
Just one thing, really. As you see on the memo, our normal annual revenue sufficiency analysis, we have added a couple things this year, and this is probably just a one-time thing only. The impact fee study that we do, and I apologize, we do that recurringly about every 5 years, and it's been about 5 years since we've looked at those impact fee or capacity fees. I think all of you are aware of our involvement with the Polk Regional Water Cooperative. As that progresses, we really want to take a look at what those costs are going to be for us and how that's going to impact our rates. So that's part of this study. And the other thing I kind of wanted to look at was when we talked about affordability, is there something we as a utility can do to perhaps contribute to that and help those low-income ratepayers that are out there? And so that's part of this study as well.
Excellent. Questions from commissioners? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson, and we appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and commissioners.
Oh, you're welcome, sir. That takes us to item number 4, Mr. Palmer.
Okay, the next item is a task authorization with Florida Acquisition and Appraisal. We're going to need their services in order to acquire property within the wetland area that lies between US Highway 98 North and Providence Road. I believe that is just south of Griffin Road. There's a large undeveloped area that's owned by multiple parties, and that has been studied as a good opportunity to both to treat and increase the stormwater capacity of that area and what goes into Lake Parker and improve the water quality of the stormwater going into Lake Parker. So Florida Acquisition and Appraisal will do all the title work and appraisal work and negotiation with the various different property owners that own properties within there in order to acquire that and then to be able to re-engineer that to improve its stormwater treatment abilities.
It's a very large area.
Yes.
Commissioner Walker.
Mr. Palmer, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. That particular area, of course, has been, I think we've been talking about that for several years. I know since I've been on the commission, hearing about that particular wetland source there because it abuts, as he indicated, pretty much, heading just south of Griffin, where the Providence Road, is
right
as you're going north into that area, but also the situation regarding Lake Parker and how the flow goes from that point over east to the Lake Parker area, of course. And now you got this big construction project going on right there, which abuts the wetlands with that new senior housing project is coming out of the ground. I guess my question would be, Palmer, as we're looking at to this situation, we're doing all we can to help mitigate, as best, I guess, that flow of all the water is heading back toward Lake Park and that kind of thing. Is that correct?
Yes, this will not only improve the water quality, but improve the storage capacity of that area and hopefully reduce flooding in that area.
Okay, so thank you.
Two objectives here.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
There's a large map on this with different colored areas, and you might comment with respect to the project overall, if you don't mind, Lori Smith.
Is that a question to Greg James? Oh, Lori, I'm sorry.
Well, I was to Lori. You're still muted. I'm sorry, Lori. Unmute. No, you're still muted, Lori. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. We could hear you, but now we can't. Apologize.
Can you hear me
one more
now?
round. Yes. Yes.
Oh, you can tell I'm too old for this technology.
No, you're just seating in.
Okay. So I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
The question is, you might want to talk to us about the scope of this and how it helps the entire area.
Okay, so this particular wetland has been studied in the past, and it's been about 20 years in the making that we want to take this wetland area and rehydrate it. When the canal was dug, the existing canal was dug like 30 or 40 years ago, was meant to drain that swamp. But now that, you know, we've looked at the water quality in Lake Parker over the past multiple decades, we realized that that connection to that wetland has impacted the water quality in Lake Parker. So we need to look at this a little bit closer as to rehydrating that swamp to bring it back to its natural capacity to take in stormwater, take nutrients and suspended solids out of that stormwater, and also contribute the natural type of tannins and things that improve the water quality in Lake Parker. Also, we're looking at turning this into a regional type stormwater treatment project. So we want to not only rehydrate that wetland, turn it back into a naturally functioning system, but also to add in at some point some stormwater storage, some treatment ponds, and help alleviate flooding. And it will take stormwater from the regional area around the project.
And so it would build in some filtration areas or something somewhere along the way when you do that?
Absolutely. So it'll be naturally functioning filtration as well as additional constructed filtration with stormwater treatment ponds.
Somewhat like you're doing over at Lake Hunter.
Exactly.
Commissioner Reed and then Commissioner Walker.
Thank you. Greg, I was looking on the performance component. I guess they're getting paid a fee to do this. What if they're not successful? Is it a per personal fee, or is it how does that fee structure work?
Yes, the fees broke out per parcel. And then if we get to the point that there are parcels that they aren't able to acquire, we will rethink this and see if it's something that we want to come back to the commission and consider eminent domain.
I'd like to avoid that if at all possible.
Sure, and that's why you hope to use this structure. Commissioner Walker.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, and Ms. Laurie. Thank you for the explanation, because I know, as you indicated, you know, this is something that's been talked about for years, and now because I see a lot, you know, we have a lot of construction, you know, with new development coming up, and that's abutting almost this wetland area. You know, that's where MLK dares into, right there behind New Bethel AME Church, all that wetland back there. And then, you know, again, with the construction of, I just had mentioned, the senior housing projects coming off Providence Road, and also with the possibility of a new car, the car lot. That's good. I guess, what is it called?
CarMax.
Yeah, not CarMax. This is the one with I forget the name of the brand. The brand Jaguar, I think it's a Jaguar, and someone that's supposed to come out there. So, you know, I was just concerned to make sure, because I know it's been talked about for years, would it help support, you know, all the new constructions coming in, to help support even the residents that are living in this right adjacent and abutting the area for water quality, and as it flows off into Lake Parker. So thank you for the explanation. I do appreciate that.
Your point, Commissioner Walker, is all the more reason it should be done, right?
Yes.
Right. And this is all wetlands area as it is currently anyway, is it not?
That's correct. Yes. It's actually on the National Wetland Inventory as delineated wetland. So it would be extremely difficult to use this type of property for anything else. And it helps us avoid using other valuable property for stormwater treatment.
In aggregate, how many acres are we talking about, roughly?
About 200.
Okay, very good. Any other questions by the commission? Mr. James, Ms. Smith, thank you very much for your input.
Thank you.
All right. That is the end of our city attorney's comments. Is it not? Yes. Oh, no, you have item 6. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just item 6 is what we've been doing over the last couple of weeks just to make sure we're in good shape with respect to the emergency management statutes of the state of Florida, just being conservative and extending the emergency declaration every 7 days. Make sure we're in good shape for both the powers that we need to exercise and FEMA reimbursement purposes.
Excellent. Any questions on that, Commissioner Franklin?
Just realizing now, though, that since we're absolutely out through the entire month of April, do we need to keep doing this every single week when we know it's not even within our purview to expire it sooner than the end of April?
Well, there's this language in the statute that says that you have to extend a local declaration of local state emergency every 7 days. I'll look into whether there's a way to do this more automatically versus having you take action. But just right now, just playing it safe.
Okay.
So it's compliant, but you're absolutely right. City Manager Delgado, 100% so far.
I really appreciate, good. I really appreciate Palmer taking a look at that. Obviously, it would help us maintain some flexibility and being a little more nimble in some of the actions that we're doing, such as the hiring freeze and those type of things, to have that extended. So if it can be, I would highly ask that you would think about it, Commission.
Well, and I think what Commissioner Franklin's saying really is that we want to opt to do so to keep it from having to be an item. So we'll be compliant, but would automatically renew till April 30th if there's some provision for that. Commissioner Walker.
That was my question on I think up in the first part of the week, could we do it? And of course, I was told, or we were told, we could not because of the state statute situation. But I certainly would agree, as I even asked a couple of days or so ago when we met, if it could be done that way to extend the time because what we know we're dealing with, and right now with the executive order going through in the month 1st of May, I would go along with what I think is best. Why every 7 days if we can extend it to at least to the end of the order, especially so.
I will take a look at it.
Sure. He'd like to find a way to do that too. All right, we will. And that takes us to utility item A, which is ordinances, and then B, resolutions. And that brings us to Mr. Sirianni.
We have an agreement with Boat Power International. This is for replacement of the SCR catalyst modules for Unit 5. If the SCR is what controls the nitrogen oxide emissions from Unit 5, and this is also to ensure compliance with emission standards and requirements. The existing SCR catalyst is approximately 18 years old. And according to our engineers, that the typical catalyst has a lifespan of 5 years. So it's certainly in time to look at this and furnish and install a new set of modules for the unit. And accordingly, we went out, the city's purchasing department in January. We received a number of responses from the contractors. You have a chart below, and you'll see that broken down into the catalyst itself and then the installation costs. Once staff reviewed the proposals, Boat Power International was selected to perform all the services. The total cost is actually, the bid cost there you see is $420,100, but the total cost of the services is $427,100. And that $7,000 additional amount includes a $7,000 for disposal of the existing catalyst as part of the work. This is included in Lakeland Electric's FY20 budget, and it is scheduled to be performed during the October 2020 fall outage.
Questions by commissioners? And that's, I mean, it's a have to be done. So there's no option on it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Commissioner McCarley.
I just want to compliment LE because we hear this over and over again, that we've made things last longer than most other organizations have. So I just want to compliment the staff because I think you said 5 years is typical and we're at 18. That means we've been very frugal, I think, over the years, and the management's done a good job at keeping these things rolling along and not have to do expenditures. So I just want to say kudos to them.
Excellent word, and so true. You know, you look at some of these things and think about how long we make them last, and that is, just to reiterate Commissioner McCarley's words, remarkable. Any other questions on this item? All right, that takes us then to number 4.
Last item I have is, this is a change order number 6 with Siemens Energy Inc. This is for an upgrade to Unit 5's combustion hardware and also to extend the remaining long-term maintenance agreement. We've had a long-term maintenance agreement for this with Siemens since May 2010. Part of this agreement includes inspection and maintenance service for the steam generator, the steam turbine generator, and turbine valves. And proper maintenance is required to continue performance and reliability. Part of the discussions with Siemens was to replace the existing combustion hardware with newly designed upgraded hardware known as the next gen upgrade. The upgrade will actually extend the maintenance levels intervals by eliminating 2 program outages. In addition, the upgrade will decrease Unit 5's heat rate, and that will result in burning less fuel and increasing Unit 5's efficiency. The existing long-term maintenance agreement is based on operational hours and would expire after 48,000 operating hours, which would be estimated to occur around 2027. With the extension of this agreement, the operating hours would be extended to 66,000 hours, and that is estimated to occur around 2030. So essentially a 3-year additional extension to that agreement. Performance under this agreement, Siemens has agreed that this will be secured by liquidated damages, and those are capped at $1 million. In addition, the change order will restructure the payments, and that'll start in 2021. The annual that will result in approximately a 5.1% reduction in operating costs. So Lakeland Electric is looking at a savings of just over $3 million by entering into this agreement. The total cost of the change order is $13,292,663, but that includes $5.5 million for the hardware upgrades. And those scheduled payments will be made annually between fiscal years 21 to fiscal year 30. And Lakeland Electric, obviously, those will be subject to annual budget approval by Lakeland Electric as well, and approval by the commission.
This is a lot similar to upgrading jet engines. And then I'm thinking about doing majors and minors on jet engines, but it really is the jet engine, because this is Unit 5. So that $13 million upgrade does lots of things in terms of extension of life, lowering heating, and making some additional savings as we go along as well to offset some of that $13 million, as well as the hardware upgrades. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. And I think that is it on the utility side.
Mr. Mayor, we skipped over a resolution on the fuel charge under 8B.
I apologize for that.
And that Lakeland Electric, because of the market conditions, is recommending a reduction in the fuel charge by 7 megawatts per hour that would begin with meters read on or after May 1st of this year. So there will be a utility committee presentation on that on Monday.
I'm sorry, absolutely did, and I apologize. Any questions on that? Let's wait till we see it. We'll get to see it as a utility committee anyway, and I don't think a lot of people will be objecting. All right, City Manager Delgado.
Yeah, one of the things on that item that's vitally important is obviously we want to go ahead and help the people in our community, and that's one of the things that Lakeland Electric have been doing with this proposal. However, as this moves forward and as we start seeing how long the challenge takes, it will be necessary for us to continue to talk about this on a month-to-month basis, or at least by September, because keeping this will ultimately impact the days cash on hand as we go into the new fiscal year.
Excellent point. And we all have some commercial businesses that are using less electricity all the while.
So, but what Lakeland Electric wanted to do, what Joel and his team wanted to do, is really offer some respite for those folks that are currently being impacted quite negatively.
Good. Any other questions by commissioners on this for clarification? All right. All right, that takes us to the end of our agenda items. I want to double check to make sure I'm right in saying that. And oh no, we will have an audience participation area. Then let's look at the recommendations for municipal board. You want me to take this, or this would be Mr. Reed's? Commissioner Reed, you take this one.
He's not the chair.
I think that's Chad, isn't it?
It's Madden.
Oh, it's Stephanie, and she can't read.
It's me, but you could go ahead and take that, Mayor.
All right, thank you. So on the municipal boards committee appointments, and I apologize for being confused on that, Commissioner Madden. Airport Advisory Board recommendation from Gene Conrad to appoint Salvatore Capra to a 3-year term beginning April 6, 2020 and ending April 5th, 2023. The Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, a recommendation from Annie Gibson to reappoint David Bryant to an additional 3-year term beginning April 6th and ending in 2020 and ending April 5th in 2023. Mayor's Council on the Arts, recommendation from myself to appoint Daryl Ward to a 3-year term beginning April 6th, 2020 and ending April 5th, 2023. Code Enforcement Board, recommendation from Jim Denny to reappoint Veronica Roundtree to an additional 3-year term beginning May 1st, 2020 and ending April 30th, 2023. And then Zoning Board of Adjustments and Appeals, a recommendation from Matthew Lyons to reappoint Aaron Bates to an additional 3-year term beginning retroactive to February 22nd, 2020 and ending February 21st, 2023. Any comments on that at all? All right, that will take us to Commissioner Reed. Yes, go ahead.
Do we normally get a little dossier on each one of these members? Again, I think these may be reappointments. That may not be why, but I didn't see any in my package for.
There weren't any in this package, but typically we do. And in all the we had one earlier on Daryl Ward, and if you want, I can make sure you get that resent.
I can provide all of those to everyone after the meeting's over. It should have been attached. My apologies.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Commissioner McCarley?
Do we need to move to approve those, or are we waiting until Monday?
We'll wait till Monday, but that just covers them.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor, the reason we put them all under this is to save time. Look at that.
We have some engaged citizens who wanted to say hello, so they have been. He was not patiently waiting to do that.
I love it.
You refresh our hearts, so that's good.
Definitely reminds us why we're all doing what we're doing. The reason we moved in this direction was to save time, and obviously the full commission can vote on this. So we could either do it today as a recommendation, or you could do it Monday. Excuse me.
Well, would you like to do it today as a recommendation, Commissioner McCarley?
Yeah, I move to accept those names if we can do that today, and then we don't need to do it Monday.
Excellent. And so that was Commissioner McCarley. And is there a second from Commissioner Franklin? Excellent. Thank you, sir. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye, or with their hands.
Aye.
Hands are better. Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Unanimously approved.
Okay. So now it'll move under the report portion. It won't have to be a vote.
Okay. Thank you. That was efficient. Now comments from commissioners. Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to my colleagues, and thank you as well, Mr. Delgado. I really appreciate, I guess how I would say the Spirit of the Lord moves in certain respect. As I was contemplating, of course, where we had the presentation from the Lakeland History and Cultural Center on this morning, I happened to get a call, and it was from Mr. Delgado, and I shared with him I just was about to call the chair of that committee, which of course is former Commissioner Don Salvage, to say, you know, I think during this time what we're dealing with right now, you know, and the things I know that were of urgency pretty much among us in our city and our residents here, that we move the actual meeting as it has been, as you all know. So I appreciate Mr. Delgado. You know, we you know, sometimes things work together for our good. And no, I don't say that. Not sometimes. All things do work together for our good. So at the time you called me, and at the time I was thinking to make the call to Don, it all worked out. So my colleagues, I appreciate you allowing us, you know, that flexibility to move the actual meeting down further into the latter part of the month here to have that report. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, sir. Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Commissioner Walker, for your work on the History and Cultural Center. And I know that's you're waiting to be able to share some exciting things with us. And there are a number of initiatives I know around the city that we're putting on hold, or we're saying we will address this at a later time. And so I know everyone's being patient in that. So thank you for your work, and I look forward to hearing more when that time comes. I wanted to have maybe Palmer, if you could just give some insights on the governor's second executive order yesterday, because I know we've received some questions about, does that affect our vote earlier in the week? And just if you could share perspective on that as we're answering some questions about that order.
Sure. The original order, stay-at-home order from the governor, stated that this order shall supersede any conflicting official action or order issued by local officials in response to COVID-19, but only to the extent that such action or order allows essential services or essential activities prohibited by this executive order. So that has been interpreted to mean that we can be more restrictive, but not less restrictive. The second, the amendment to the stay-at-home order issued subsequently by the governor eliminated the language, but only to the extent that such action or order allows essential services or essential activities prohibited by this executive order. So some people have interpreted that as saying we can be neither more restrictive nor less restrictive. And the question is, how does that affect our closure of the parks? And my opinion on that is that the action of the city commission to close the parks is still not inconsistent with the governor's order. The governor's order allows, as an essential activity, participating in recreational activities consistent with social distancing guidelines, such as walking, biking, hiking, fishing, hunting, running, or swimming. All those activities can continue with or without the city's parks being open. So I do not see a conflict with the governor's order, either the initial order or the amendment to that order.
Thank you, Palmer. I think that's helpful.
Palmer, while we're on this, why don't we take and talk about essential and non-essential services, just an overview from your perspective.
Okay. I think everybody in the state is struggling with this, figure out what all this means. There's some vagueness in the order, so we're all struggling with it. There's essentially two categories of essential services that are referenced by the governor's order. The first is the list that is detailed by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. That's very clear, I think, and it's what you might expect. Electricity, water, wastewater, first responders. So far, so good with that. Then he references the list by Miami-Dade County as additional essential services, and then a lot of those categories are non-controversial as well: grocery stores, gas stations, healthcare providers, that type of thing. And as we go on, it gets more murky. I think we're still on solid ground as far as some things that are specifically excluded as essential services. The stay-at-home order issued by the governor states that nothing in that order rescinds any of the previous executive orders that he has issued. And some of those executive orders specifically call out certain sectors as non-essential. on-premise consumption in bars, on-premise consumption in restaurants, gyms, fitness centers, elective medical procedures. So we're still on pretty solid ground with those activities. But there's going to be a requirement once we get past those things that are specifically called out as non-essential for a lot of discretion and to proceed carefully. As we've seen, the governor is issuing executive orders almost daily, sometimes on an hourly basis. So what we think might be non-essential 1 minute suddenly becomes essential with another order or directive issued. I would point out that there's also a provision in the governor's order that allows with the approval of the state coordinating officer, the addition of additional activities and businesses as essential services. So there's going to be an online list kept on the Division of Emergency Management's website at www.floridadisaster.org, and it's also this list of essential services will be at Florida Department of Health's website at www.floridahealth.gov. So as that list evolves, that's obviously going to be a very, very important place to look to see what's allowed and what's not allowed. And there's obviously the opportunity to query the governor's office and seek the addition of activities to that. So
could you repeat both of those again, please?
The websites are, and I believe they're going to be the same list, but the first one is the Division of Emergency Management's website, www.floridadisaster.org, and then the Florida Department of Health's website at www.floridahealth.gov.
Very good. Thank you. We're getting anything else on that, sir?
That's all for now.
Okay, we're getting a lot of questions specifically from businesses on am I still essential? I have good controls. I think if you go to E in that document, it says all businesses or organizations are encouraged to provide delivery, carry out, curbside service outside of the business and organization, or is placed online by telephone to the greatest extent practical. So if a business is doing that and they're making it, and they're providing a service that people are dependent upon or certainly highly desirous of, and they do those things, and it isn't requiring their employees to physically interact with the customer or violate the 6-foot rule, that is the kind of tone we want to encourage small businesses to continue to operate as long as they're complying that direction. And so our goal is not necessarily to throw everything to the non-essentials list and eliminate the ability to provide services if you're providing something that people essentially rely on, or depend on. So for example, a bookstore could take an order, know the customer's there, put the book outside, make it available if they need it. That kind of a service when the customer arrives, so that they can pick it up, take the transaction electronically. So we want you to be encouraged, for any of you that are feeling you're on the borderline where you want to make certain you're being compliant, to work that way until further notice. Would that generally be a true statement, Mr. Davis?
I think that's correct. I think we're going to proceed very carefully before taking any further action.
I have had some other people mention this is on essential activities where we spend our time talking about the parks, but it also talks about making sure that you can assist or care for a loved one or friend. So to the extent someone needs so people are worried about traveling. Do I get on I-4 to go assist someone, my mother in Orlando, for example, who may need some assistance in her home now that she's there? Yes, you can do that. But the nature of your trip is to do that. It's a caring activity, purposeful, and you're minimizing all the opportunities for people that, you don't make it a big family trip necessarily. You do the functional person that does the work, so that we minimize the risk for that person who's the recipient of those services. Comments from commissioners in this regard? Yes, Commissioner Reed. You're still muted.
We have, I guess we're supposed to have a TPO meeting on the 9th. And I was wondering, how are we going to handle that?
Well, that's going to be decided at the county level. I would suspect they go to Zoom by then.
It's already been indicated we would do. It's already been indicated by an email.
Oh, I haven't read that, Commissioner Walker. Thank you.
Yeah, we got that already, saying we'll be doing Zoom on April 9th. And I think Ms. Tracy did send out to us, those of us on the TPO board, to let her know so she can make sure she get us, of course, get us the proper information needed to do the Zoom meeting on the 9th.
Okay. I may have already said yes and didn't even realize I had done that. Okay, so very good. And I did. Okay, thank you. Commissioner McCarley.
I think Mr. Franklin was before me. Scott, do you want to?
Mr. Franklin, sorry.
It's okay. You can go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to say quickly for our small businesses, all of the small business activity in that agency, SBA.gov, on the federal level, is working with local banks to help support with payroll. And so it's really imperative that you keep following the COVID sites. There probably is a link on our Lakeland site too. So there are a lot of opportunities right now to support our small businesses to make sure that they're making payroll, and they might not be just loans. There are loans available, and there are also some opportunities that if you continue to help your employees, that will be forgiven after the fact. But I hate to speak to all that. I don't have all the details, but I know that our local banks have been pushing out information to people who bank with them and businesses who bank with them. So check with your local bank, and also check the SBA, S as in Sam, B as in boy, A.gov site for any kind of support.
Yeah, and that is very important, and I appreciate you mentioning that, Commissioner McCarley, because that's out of that CARES portion of the CARES Act. And you essentially can get 2.5 months of payroll for employees who continue if you qualify for this, and really for activity that you do in 8 weeks. So it gives you some ability to even cover the interest if they weren't kept on later. And so she's absolutely right. What you want to do is make certain you work through this and know that it's available so that you could have some relief. And if those employees remain on, that money actually can be forgiven on a longer term basis and not even repaid. So there's some provision for this on the backside, and we don't know what this is going to look like, but to try and do restoral quickly. My concern is that we raced the economic side of this too fast to have the human safety side preserved. There's actually a very good editorial in the Ledger today on that topic, which is, first we try and find the plateau. Well, first we need to get more tests, which that is obviously working, and we're working on getting the turnarounds on those faster. We're working at Lakeland Regional Health, for example, to try and get to where we can get to 48 hours on turnover very near term. Second, we work for a plateau of incidents and watch that plateau then begin to rescind and actually become lower. And that's when we would start to think about removing the social isolation issues. And then we work full steam ahead on a vaccine as an economy. And I think we're working on those three things in sequence. Our mindsets have to be that this is going to be longer than we'd like to really think it is right now. I will tell you personally, this is just me. I think of this through the doing what we're doing right now through the end of May completely. I don't even anticipate it would be June before we'd start to see some meetings come together, and that might be too soon. The numbers will tell us. That's the bottom line. We will see when it is appropriate to go back out, and the heat of the summer will be in place for the numbers. But I would personally not expect to ever see schools go back this semester. We're going to do some way of ending those probably without ever returning. And so if we get our long-term game on, we can start to really think, okay, I'm going to hunker down for 60 to 90 days, and we're going to see how we work and live like this. And if I'm a small business owner, how can I prepare for that? How can I provide for my employees? Who's essential is, and who might have this month off and who might have next month off as part of the way that you might think. So just be as deliberate, but it's as necessary, but starts probably talking with your banker. Excellent advice. Thank you. Other comments? On any other topic? Oh, Commissioner Franklin, yes.
This is back on the essential activities, and I know we flogged this recreational activities thing to death, but I think it's important that while all these types of exercise are listed as essential activities, I think it's very important to note that that all of the federal and state parks are closed. So for anyone that's, the governor's not saying where you have to do those forms of exercise, and that's very telling that he chose to close every single state park. So for those who want to interpret that as, critical of why we would want to close ours down, I think we can look to example to everywhere else, including our county.
I agree. And I think this commission would be very gun shy about opening those areas back up too soon. We're going to go long on this, and we should. We will remember this as a time that we work to be as drastic as necessary. And we did what protected lives foremost, and we got creative about how to sustain economy underneath that. Other comments from anyone? Any additions from you, City Manager Delgado?
I have a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I did want to read a little bit. I was talking to Michael Spake last night, and he gave me some information that I could share this morning that might help formulate some questions for the rest of my colleagues for Monday. So certainly he's going to give an update on. Should I speak more slowly?
Yeah, no, that's fine. And he's from Lakeland Regional Health, correct?
Yes, correct. Okay. So from Lakeland Regional Health, this is the numbers as of yesterday, Thursday. So as of yesterday, they had tested 385 people. And out of those 385 people they've tested, 330 were still pending. So that speaks to the Quest Labs difficulty with the backlog and trying to get those tests confirmed and sent back. So it does confirm what we've been hearing, that even though we've had more labs open up and more tests become available, it has been difficult with the turnaround time for the hospital. With those being the big numbers, 385 tested, 330 pending, 53 of those were negative and 2 were positive. And of those tested, 194 have been discharged. 104 of those were ambulatory, and 87 of those were inpatient tested. And then as of Thursday, they had 99 patients are in the hospital, and they're on dedicated floors. We talked about that before, how that's a strategy to keep all the potential COVID patients together. Now, certainly not all 99 of those are positive. They could not confirm of the 99 how many were positive, but many of those are awaiting testing results. And 13 of those patients are on ventilator care. So we know from our, when Kevin was able to broadcast with the city and Lakeland Regional, that they had mentioned, I think that they were able to convert and have 167. You can correct me if, and I'm sure we could ask that on Monday, is how many I think they had at our last meeting. So we could get a confirmation on how many ventilators they do have. When I asked about the PPE, certainly it's a challenge across the country. But they wanted to say that they've been so grateful because they have gotten to days where they were down to 2 to 3 days of gowns and masks left. But because of the community, those have been able to be maintained. They've had donations, and that's really what's helped get them through as they await our area to gain more of a priority, since priorities have been given to the other more affected areas. I certainly don't want to give any details about the testing coming, but they are very excited about the opportunity to work with the city about a potential drive-through testing site. And you could ask about that on Monday. They are doing daily temperature checks and modifying their space to ensure distancing, which you could ask them about if you wanted more specifics. And they'll go into more detail about the planning and procurement for this time period. they're just thinking with they're thinking that they're in just the beginning. So they don't, think that we're finished or close to the finish. They're going to be thinking they're in the beginning and planning accordingly. And so they are, getting ready to make sure that they have the ability to serve 1,000 patients inside the medical center. They expect that within that 1,000 patients, 70% could be in isolation, 50% could be in ICU, and they are expecting that 50% of those patients would be on ventilators for a period of 4 weeks. So they are doing everything they can to make sure that they have that going forward, and that's their goal. One of the things I wanted to mention is that, you might have been watching on TV and seeing our own Florida Division of Emergency Management, Jared Moskowitz, and I know he was on Tucker Carlson last night, and he's been on NBC, and he's been really trying to bring attention to the 3M distributor situation. I know about a month ago when they placed their order, most of you were probably on the call when we heard that we would have 1 million masks in Florida by March 25th, and then we'd have another 1 million masks in Florida by March 28th, and that by April 1st, we'd have 5 million masks, which I think the last call we heard, there's about 600,000 masks that have made it to Florida. So he really, has gone to great extents to try to find out where that has, why we fell down in priority. He thought maybe it was because of other cities with a bigger outbreak were getting those masks, and he, it is his belief that they're going to foreign countries for cash. So that is, what I've heard him say on the news that I've watched. But certainly that is concerning, and hopefully that's bringing attention to it so that we can make sure that those distributors have some checks and balances in line from 3M to make sure that they're going to healthcare facilities, and that we get those since like Lakeland Regional is, anticipating that this is just the beginning, and so they're going to need a lot more. So those are just some updates that Michael Spake shared with me last night. Just like Chad had his son enter the picture, he was helping his children with their remote learning, as I'm sure Commissioner McCarley and I are both doing that as well. So we're juggling a lot of hats, but I know all of us are working hard, and I'm really excited to hear again from our healthcare professionals on Monday, and see if there's any way that we could, join forces to advocate. It does seem daunting with the whole world all, putting their names in, for these supplies, just like, we mentioned the small businesses are breaking down websites to be able to access some of the loans and some of the support that's coming. But anyway, I did want to just, I said, you could wait till Monday. And he said, I just would, like you to share this on Friday, because then that gives them a chance over the weekend to think about, what I've said, and maybe, formulate some other questions that he could answer before Monday.
Excellent.
And that is it.
Thank you for that report. And we have City Manager Delgado and I have an opportunity to do a weekly update with the hospital as well. And they're very encouraged by some of the contractual things that they're putting in place right now to help relieve some of those problems. And so I'm sure that'll be part of the Monday update as well. Thank you very much, Commissioner Madden. It's great news, and I do agree with you, by the way, that we're on the front end of this. We are not in the middle of it at all. This is the calm before the storm. Commissioner Reed.
Would it be possible for Audrey to send us an email of the updates on a periodical basis?
She's doing that, I think, pretty much every day.
Okay.
Commissioner, City Manager Delgado, I almost got it done.
Yeah. After all this, I'm not sure I want your job. But in all honesty, Commissioner Reed, yes, Audrey is trying to go ahead and provide you daily emails as soon as she's able to get the information. She obviously is wearing a lot of hats right now. She too is talking with the hospital about how to help our first responders, and I know she's working on some information to go ahead and provide that to you. So I know she is, but I'll ask her to keep that up. And I know she's on the line if you have any direct question for her.
Well, the main thing
Oh, go ahead. Ask the
I'm sorry.
question.
The main thing I would like to have, like Palmer mentioned, if we have some new verbiage coming out on essential businesses and stuff like that, that's more so of what I would be concerned with.
We definitely are going to try to continue to provide you any executive order updates or amendments. But we've even been told the best way to find out is to go to those websites, specifically if the governor is making some quick and nimble decisions.
That's how you know you can keep up. In the meantime, do your compliance that if you're providing a service, do your compliance according to the order. And Audrey actually would be less the person that will provide those kinds of updates, that she's going to be more emergency management oriented for us in terms of the things that we're doing as a city and county. But we'll look for those other essential, non-essential, because I know all of us are getting questions on that, and that's an important thing for us to be able to comment on. Commissioner Walker, you had something.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to share with you I guess what you just said, what she does, what she's, and I guess the scope of things, what she's kind of being responsible for is Mr. Delgado probably can even allude to even more, because I know I get the reports, as you all do, I would imagine, twice a day. Seems like coming from her morning and afternoon, or I would say late morning, early evening, about the actual numbers and where we stand as a city and as a county with the various cases here or in our geographical area. So I know that's what I've been getting anyway.
Audrey, if you would like to make a comment at all, don't hesitate to unmute yourself, and we would invite you to weigh in.
Yes. During the morning, I'm on the state call, and in the afternoon, I'm on a county call, and even on the weekends, state and Department of Health calls. And sometimes I get information from those calls. And so if you see an email from me with just the information on it without the actual document, it's because I want to let you know, depending on how long it takes them to get that document to me. Our Region 4 coordinator, Paul Sadal, has been working tirelessly trying to get everything to all of the emergency managers in his region, those documents. But with his deployment, it's been really tough for him to get them to us in a timely manner. So getting that information on those state calls has allowed me to get that information to you as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your continuing work.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Any questions for Ms. Game from the commissioners? Chief Garcia, if you can weigh in a little bit on how things are going from a policing standpoint, that would be great. You show unmuted, but we can't hear you yet. Do it one more time. There, we'll try now. Same problem, sorry.
Chief, you might want to check if your mic's on.
All right, well, you're on another radio band at some level, I'm sure, that is more important than this one. But if you can get that corrected, that'd be great to have a weigh-in.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, while the chief is trying to look, obviously today was day one, or actually day two of what the governor's executive orders. As you traverse around the city, you're going to see a lot of fences, a lot of signs around parks and trails, basically saying that there are no trespassing, these parks are closed. I do want to say, and because I can't say it enough, I know the community is going through a tremendous amount of angst, but I can tell you the public servants of the city of Lakeland, even while they're going through that same angst, they're working incredibly hard to make sure that the normal services continue to be operated in a manner that everyone expects, whether it's electric utilities, water and wastewater utilities. We might have to make some modifications moving forward, might have to change some schedules. We did a little bit of changing with our solid waste pickups in order to help us meet those social distancing protocols. Obviously, there's going to be people working from home. There's going to be people at home in order for us to go ahead and make sure that employees aren't sitting on top of each other, so that we're also doing that. There's going to be some delays. There's going to be some possibility of some slowdowns on our side, but I want the public and I want all the community and our business partners to know we're going to continue to try to meet all their needs, even with the possibility of some minor delays and trying to get a hold of each other and trying to figure out how to do virtual meetings and teleconferencing. And so I just want to tell you how proud I am of our staff, those working from home, those who can't be with us because of social distancing, and those who are really putting it on the line and continue to be out there servicing the community.
Excellent report. Chief Garcia, are you on? No, we'll work on that. Commissioner McLeod.
Yes, I just wanted to echo what Tony was saying, and seeing that we have over 500 employees who are working remotely, and I know that continues to inch up, and I know that's not always easy to get that in place as quickly as our departments have done that. So I applaud them for making that happen. I know it's been a challenge, but that's been really good work, and to see that come about in a couple of weeks is well done.
Excellent. Thank you. Good word. Any other comments for the good of the whole? All right, then if there's a motion for adjournment, there is another comment first from Kevin Cook.
Commissioner Franklin had his hand up first. Go ahead, Commissioner Franklin.
I didn't see it.
No, that was just a motion to adjourn.
I was just going to state.
Okay, we have a motion in a second, but we're going to have a Kevin Cook moment first.
Just quickly, I was just going to state that at one point we had 40 users, and I would say 90% of those were video. So the system looks as if it worked pretty well today. I apologize for the other day. My computer locked up, and I think it was just a fluke. So fingers crossed for Monday. Thank you, guys. Be safe.
It appeared, by the way, Kevin, to have locked up on that 38th caller, which you couldn't eliminate for some reason. Yes, go ahead.
So we had at that time, we had 50 users on at once. And I don't know if it was a coincidence or what, but that 50 number toasted my system.
Got it. Well, we're learning. And, I saw 2 updates come through on my computer yesterday, one from GoToMeeting and one from Zoom that automatically downloaded when you log off. So some of that they're learning too.
Yeah,
I'm sure. All right, there's a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same.
Aye.
Unanimously passes. We'll see you later on Monday. Thanks. Be safe.